Hello, and welcome to XX Will Travel, the Halloween edition.
Yeah. This is Inez Bolina.
And this is Kathy Polkrabeck.
And together we are XX Will Travel.
You may have noticed we have a little bit of a different theme song this month. That is because it is Halloween. Or, we're coming up to Halloween. It is also, I did a little sound design. It's a political statement about how I've been feeling for the last 2 weeks and the state of women in the United States in the year 2017.
So it's more of a conceptual single.
It's really however you want to look at it, but that was my thought when I was sound designing.
Well, I felt the terror.
Thank you. It's doing its job.
Because I was just thinking that out of this episode, I love the topic, but I actually don't have any paranormal spooky travel stories. However, the fear that men have inflicted on me is very real.
And now back to the stories.
Yes.
You may recall that about a month ago, we have been hounding our listeners for stories that are just scary. And some of them came back, and some are of the paranormal persuasion. Mm-hmm. And the even scarier ones are things that happened in real life. So, what are we going to start out with?
Well, I think you need to start out with one of your own. Because unlike me, Kathy was like, I have a bunch of scary, spooky travel stories. So I want to hear them.
And it's not just canceled flights.
No.
First, I would like to start off with this disclaimer before you think I'm just some sort of paranormal weirdo. I do enjoy ghost stories, but I also enjoy the debunking of ghost stories and realize that for every ghost story, there are another 10 that are the result of a gas leak or a mischievous child or a cat, because cats are inherently evil. So take these with a grain of salt. If you have a logical explanation, feel free to send us some feedback, and I'll take a look at it. I'm open to anything, paranormal or not.
In other words, don't tweet at us with, "You're being irrational." We already know.
Oh, no, I'm not irrational. Anyway, all right, so this story takes place in Puerto Rico at the Hilton Grand Caribe, which was also the time I encountered a certain Mr. David Arquette at the bar every evening.
How terrifying was that?
He has nothing to do with the story, but it was pretty scary. And he was allegedly sober, which scarily enough you can't do when you're at the bar drinking beers every night. Anyway, he was a nice guy. Really, he seemed a little flaky, but, who isn't? So I was there because some friends had a business trip. I decided to tag along because it's Puerto Rico and it's February and I live in Chicago. So I was sharing a bed with a friend of mine, and she had arrived at like 2 a.m. And I woke up and she got settled and just went to bed right away. And in the middle of the night, I felt somebody tapping each knot of my spine, like each vertebrae, very deliberate, kind of playful taps, and moving down my back. Like they tapped my back 6 times. My friend is very affectionate, and she's kind of jokestery. And so the next morning I said, why did you tap me like that last night? And she said, I didn't tap you. And I was like, somebody tapped me. Because it just felt so deliberate that it definitely wasn't the wind.
Right.
And later, after my friend had went home, I was heading out to dinner with another friend of mine, who you'll actually hear from later, Adriana, one of the many Adrianas on this episode. And we were walking to a restaurant. And we were approaching a wrought iron fence. Stereotypical black wrought iron, taller than we were, spiky points at the top of the fence. And the bottom half of the fence was covered in foliage. So there were bushes growing on the inside of the fence. So we couldn't see what was going on inside. So we are walking on our way to dinner. We're kind of chatting. And all of a sudden we hear something rustling in the leaves. And we both kind of look at each other. It sounds like a dog is walking on the other side of the fence. And so we kind of just naturally speed up. And whatever is rustling the leaves speeds up with us. And we think this is kind of weird. And so we speed up even faster. And the thing that is walking beside us speeds up faster. And at this point, all these branches and sticks and leaves start flying from the inside of the fence through the spaces in the fence and hitting our legs. And so by this time, we're kind of freaked out. And so we go faster until something flies through the fence that I think looks like an orange, and it hits me in the calf, like right in the calf, and it was thrown hard. So Adriana and I stop, and everything goes silent, and we look down, and we watch this thing roll down on the ground. And I thought it was an orange, and Adriana thought it was a lemon. And all of a sudden, the leaves and the twigs and the branches start, being thrown through the fence again. So we ran past the fence, and as soon as we got past the end of the fence, everything stops. And we were like, what just happened? So we're on our way to this restaurant, and I see people behind us at the beginning of the fence. And so I stopped, and I was like, I want to see what happens if it's a dog or like a monkey, because in my head it's a monkey, because you have to have an opposable thumb to be able to throw something through a narrow space in a fence. And I said, I want to see what happens to them. And they walked by the fence, and nothing happened.
Whoa.
So if you are from Puerto Rico, like, God bless you, first of all, because you're going through some shit right now. And second of all, if you have monkeys on the island or can have a plausible explanation for this, I would love to hear it.
You pissed some ghost off in Puerto Rico.
A ghost of a monkey.
A ghost of a monkey. Let's hope so. So, Kathy, you were there on a business trip, is that correct?
Yes, I was tagging along on a business trip, which is an excellent way to travel, by the way.
And I was going to say, but it's also a terrifying way of travel. Just business trips in general, not tagging along. But we actually got several stories from people who had been on business trips and had been spooked, and not necessarily by their demanding bosses or some creepy coworker. And we're going to hear a story now from your friend Adriana, who is also in Puerto Rico.
Yes, who is walking next to the fence with the ghost monkey with me.
Adriana seems to be a magnet for creepy stalker spirits.
She would tell you herself that she is.
Yeah. So I'm going to listen to a story from Adriana when she took a business trip to New Orleans.
A few years ago, I was invited to go to New Orleans for work. I was very excited because I'd never been to New Orleans before. The convention where I was going to be working at was the last week of October, and it was the days leading up to Halloween, which actually added even more to the excitement and mystique that I was sure I would encounter once in New Orleans. Now, because I had to work during the day, I didn't get to really explore the city much, except at night, when I would get together with my coworkers and we'd have these delicious, lavish meals and drinks and listen to live music. The hotel where I was staying at was in the French Quarters in the corner of Canal and Bourbon Street. Now, every time I would go back into my room, something would be off. It was subtle things, like I would place my shoes near the door, but when I'd come back to the room that night, they would be under the bed. Or I would know for sure that I would, close the curtains, but when I get back into my room, curtains were wide open. Little things were misplaced, like some of my toiletries, where I would put them in the living room, they would be in the bedroom, they would be in the bathroom. These are all little things, and you can pretty much think, well, at the time I thought to myself, well, it must be housekeeping. Except that every time I was in that room, I felt like I was being watched. It's hard to explain, but there was this presence there. It wasn't a bad presence. If anything, they seemed like a playful ghost. In my mind, I imagined New Orleans back in the 1700s. I imagined that this ghost might be the ghost of a pirate. Immediately, I thought of Johnny Depp. So it wasn't so bad. On my last night, which was Halloween night, I went out with some of my coworkers. It was a beautiful night. It was drizzling out, but everybody was so happy and just enjoying the experience of being in New Orleans on Halloween. The streets were filled with people in costumes and lots of drinking. Now, if you're familiar with New Orleans, you can carry your drinks out in the streets. No big deal. Most restaurants or bars will give you a plastic cup, and they usually have like the name of the restaurant or some kind of funny picture or slogan on the cups. They're really fun keepsakes to take with you from your trip. So I was eager to collect these on my last night and bring them back home with me. That night, I collected 5 plastic cups. I definitely drank a lot, but it was fun. And when I got back into my room, I purposely washed all the cups in the bathroom sink, and I turned all 5 cups upside down on a towel. I went to bed. And as I was lying in bed, I thought about my ghost pirate, who I imagined just kind of tucked in next to me or looming around over me. I wasn't scared. I wasn't scared the whole time I was there. I just said, "Hey, buddy, good night. Happy Halloween." In the morning, I woke up really late, and I almost missed my flight out. I was rushing into the bathroom, trying to get everything sorted out, and I was like, oh my gosh, the cups. I can't forget to take those cups with me. When I walked into the bathroom, I noticed that 4 of the cups were straight up, and only 1 was upside down. Now, I know with absolute certainty that all 5 of those cups I placed upside down so they can drain on the towel. I know I had been drinking a little bit, but I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that is exactly what I did. I just froze, and I could feel this chill come down my spine. Oh my God. Ghost Pirate Boy was real. And he was like probably standing right there with me. Needless to say, I bolted out of that hotel room as quickly as I could and said, bye-bye, Ghost Pirate.
So in case you haven't figured out, I work with Adriana. However, on another business trip for the same convention, another Adriana, very popular name in the late 70s, early 80s, apparently.
Yeah.
Another Adriana told us a ghost story about her hotel, which you are going to hear now.
It was one of my first business trips. Beginning of my career, it was my first time away from my new husband. So I got to the hotel, and I had researched what the hotel that they assigned me to was. It was called the Roosevelt Hotel in New Orleans. And then I saw on Google, it's a haunted hotel. So I'm like, ooh, haunted hotel. So, I go in my room, and back then I was super excited to be in any hotel room because I didn't travel as much. So I took photos of the hotel room, and then, I worked, etc. And then at night, me and some of my coworkers and I went to a cemetery tour, guided tour. So the tour guide was, typical small town tour guide. She's this great actress. She really tries to put you in the mood. And then, so she would hype us up, for the actual cemetery tour. She showed us photos of previous tours that she had taken. And then you see, the person waiting for the tour. And then this image of a ghost next to her. Or in many of the photos had what she called orbs of concentrated energy. So just like this big whitish transparent balls that showed up on the photo. And she had explained, I had never heard of them before, but she explained that those were just orbs of concentrated energy, that they were concentrating, but they were not strong enough to actually take shape of what people think as a ghost. But it's something out there, something from beyond, whatever. So we took the tour, it was interesting. I got a couple of goosebumps here and there, that it was a midnight tour. And then she's a great actress, so she's really, and this happened. And then you could look actually inside, and you could see some bones inside in the cemetery. She told us that Lisa Marie Presley and Nicolas Cage would do some rituals at the cemetery once in a while. Anyway, so fine. It was a fun tour, kind of creepy, but fun. And the bottom line was fun. So I went back to my hotel, and it was like 1 a.m., I don't know. And I couldn't really sleep, so I decided to just see the photos that I had taken for the day. I hadn't seen my photos yet, and back then it was only the digital camera with the little visor. So I started flipping through my photos, and I see my bedroom photos. And I look at it, and I'm like, what is that white ball? So my photos of the hotel room that I was there by myself after midnight, after taking the cemetery tour, were full of orbs of concentrated energy.
Wow.
And I couldn't sleep for the rest of the night. So, the end.
Did anything else happen?
No, that was it. But it was like, I can't sleep. This is a haunted hotel. I had known this is a haunted hotel. And then it was full of orbs of concentrated energy in my photos. Because supposedly you can only catch them through photos. Later on, I kind of figured that it was just a flash reflecting on little dust specks flying around the air. But it was a very scary moment. So
because you are a very rational person.
Exactly. But it was kind of scary. It took me a while to feel comfortable sleeping again. It's like, what if she's right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my ghost story.
So New Orleans is kind of known for being creepy.
Yes.
Oh, and Adriana. The first Adriana was staying at the Crowne Plaza, so if you've had any weird stuff at the New Orleans Crowne Plaza, let us know. And the second one was staying at the Roosevelt Hotel. Wait, did I not? Yeah, the second one.
Yeah?
Yeah.
For some reason, I get the feeling that all Roosevelt hotels are haunted.
Yeah.
Right?
Because the one in LA is haunted by Marilyn Monroe.
Yes. And it just seems like it keeps popping up. But New Orleans is beautiful, and it is creepy. And it's actually a really popular destination during Halloween.
Yes.
Which is something I learned when I went there for Halloween. And it's the second biggest tourist weekend that they have. But obviously a lot less crazy than Mardi Gras. However, it's kind of cool and exciting because you'll see people in costumes everywhere. Like the buskers will all be dressed as skeletons and skulls. And they do have that creepy cemetery that second Adriana mentioned. Plus all the voodoo rituals. I don't know. I want to do the ghost tours in New Orleans.
I have actually been to that cemetery, the cemetery Adriana number 2 mentioned, with a very spicy Sicilian lady who led the tour. She was the best. She was like your creepy grandma. And I would recommend it. I went during the day. I could see why it'd be much creepier at night. And at night, the cemeteries in New Orleans are a preferred choice for ditching dead bodies. Like people just throw them in the cemetery.
Okay.
So there is a little bit of unrest there, I would imagine.
No kidding. And I think the big thing at the New Orleans cemetery is seeing the tombstone of the voodoo queen.
Oh, Marie Laveau.
Yes, Marie Laveau. Who, was she? I think American Horror Story at some point decided to take on this tale.
Wasn't it Angela Bassett?
Yes,
She was
Angela Bassett.
Marie Laveau, and Gabori Sidibe was in it too. That was a good season.
Yes. With all the witches.
Yes.
Yeah. Then it went off the rails. I don't know what's going on right now. Creepy hotels.
Check.
Well, I did want to mention a creepy hotel in Illinois.
Oh, yes.
Because it turns out that our state can also be scary as all hell.
Yes. We're flat, but scary.
Yeah. So my friend Abby Schaefer actually wrote a whole article about a creepy hotel in St. Charles, Illinois. There used to be an inn called the Howard House Hotel way back in 1871 that was run by a Mrs. Carolyn Howard who apparently had the gift of clairvoyance. And a lot of Civil War widows would go to her and ask her to connect with, the husbands and the sons that they had lost in the war. And apparently one of the people that visited Mrs. Carolyn Howard was Mary Todd Lincoln.
Ooh.
She would use an alias, Mrs. May, but she would go there to try to also connect with the spirit of her late husband as well as her son. And apparently she went there like several times, and I'm wondering if this also helped spark the rumors that she was crazy, when honestly it sounds like Mary Todd was mostly just traumatized by like all the pain. We're gonna link to that story because it's super good, and there's a lot of creepy stories about this specific like clairvoyant too, and all the things that happen around the town, and how there were several town folks that like wanted her out of the way, you know, because clairvoyancy, witchcraft, all that stuff. But apparently her husband was so powerful that they never got around to doing that.
Wow.
Yeah, so there's that. Kathy here also has a story about creepy Illinois.
I do. So my friend Genevieve actually got married in the Robert Allerton House in Monticello, Illinois. And it's this beautiful old mansion. Robert Allerton was a very, very wealthy man, and he had this mansion. It's in near Charleston, Illinois, by Eastern Illinois University. And apparently there's a guest there who never left. And they call her the Lady in White. And guests will wake up in their beds, and they will see a lady in white, and she's putting on her hat and gloves. And, you know, they'll see her in the hallway too. And so I didn't find this out until afterwards. Like I said, take this with a grain of salt, because I noticed something weird in the pictures that I took of the couple during their first dance. Actually, two people experienced this. There is a huge white orb of concentrated energy right between my friend and her husband's head during the first dance. And you're right, it could be dust. I hear you. But it also could be the woman in white saying congratulations.
Yeah.
As I prefer to think of it.
Or was their love so powerful that it emanated some crazy energy ball?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, they're still married, so maybe.
Well, encounters with the dead. Is this what's really going on? This is what our friend Anita asks herself in this story.
Hi, this is Anita. I am a longtime listener and somewhat frequent contributor to XXL Travel, and I have a scary camping story to share with you. So when I was growing up, my parents are teachers, and we had about the same schedule in school, so we would take off these very long summers and go camping and go on these epic road trips. So one summer, my uncle was getting married in Mackinac Island, and so we decided to camp our way up there from Texas, which is where we lived and where we grew up. And we were getting to a campsite. We had gone to dinner at a restaurant, so we were getting there a little bit late. And the campsite was eerily deserted. It felt like the only people that were there at this park. And I remember driving it was getting dark and going into the trees. And we just had enough time to go to the bathroom, brush our teeth, and get ready to get in for the night. My dad liked to set up his tent nearby our car, and we had this conversion van that we nicknamed the Silver Bullet that my mother and my brother and myself decided to sleep in. I was about 13 at the time. My brother was 16. And we were just sort of hanging out and laughing. My dad had gone to bed early, and we were staying up and just having a good time and telling stories and that kind of thing. And all of a sudden, we hear somebody trying to open the door of the van. And luckily, it was locked. And at first, we were like, Dad, is that you? And it was rattling. The door was rattling. And we had these windows, these conversion van windows that would just kind of pop open a little bit. And it seemed like something had put its hand under there, was trying to open the windows. And we got really silent. And we heard something crunching around outside of the van, and we were just sort of laying there looking at each other and wondering what we were going to do. And we heard it walking around the van and just laid there paralyzed with fear. And we didn't decide to leave. We turned off all the lights. We just kind of laid there for a long time, weren't really able to go to sleep until finally, hours later, when the sun came up, And my dad approached the van and we asked him, was that you? Did you hear that? What was going on? And he heard absolutely nothing. And we never knew if it was some kind of creature trying to get into the car or if it was a person. They didn't say anything. They just tried to get into the windows and the doors of our van, and we were really happy that we locked it. So that is my very eerie, scary camping story. Thanks.
Thank you, Anita. And if you want to learn more about Anita, you should listen to her episode, which is, we ran it again this summer. It's called Travel Disasters, about her time in Japan during the horrific Tokyo earthquake and how she persevered and it changed her life. So it's really a good episode if you want to check it out. Japan, another place that really likes their dead people.
There are certain countries that just love their dead people.
Every August, there's a festival in Japan called Oban, which is when everybody returns to their hometown because their ancestors are also returning to their hometowns.
Oh, I like that.
So it's like the ghosts come home and you go hang out with Grandpa. And in Mexico, there kind of is that same tradition, not so much ghosts returning home, but of honoring your ancestors for Day of the Dead. It is not just Mexican Halloween. Come on.
Lies.
So it's like paying your respects to your ancestors and people who have passed away, and they make these beautiful altars called ofertas. And I had the chance on a business trip.
Damn, these business trips are haunted.
Yeah, right? I had the chance to go to Mexico City, and it happened to be Day of the Dead, which is awesome because you go to the Zocalo, you walk past all the policemen with machine guns, which made me feel super safe, by the way. No sarcasm intended. And you go to the Zocalo, to the main square, and there are like life-sized altars to people, and I can't even describe it. We'll have to post some pictures on the blog.
Yeah.
And the kids come around, and instead of trick or treat, they say, tell me if I'm saying this right, calaveras. Calaveras. And I was like, I don't know what you're saying. But you're supposed to give them, skull. Yeah. And you're supposed to give them candy or coins. And I was like, I'm a cheap white lady who's from out of town. And you also see the elaborate sugar skulls, too, during that time of year. So I walked to the Zocalo, the main square, and it was gorgeous. There was a bunch of families. Like, it was an awesome time. And I came back to my hotel room, and I was working a convention, a dental show in Mexico City. And my friend Marisol and I had been making fun of this man with a really janky tooth costume. Like, basically, he had the tooth costume, and you know the crown of the tooth, the 2 points at the end?
Yes.
That was the bottom, and, like, the root of the tooth, what the square part was the top. And because the crown, the 2 points of the crown hit his mid-thighs, it unfortunately was not very flattering to his crotch region. Or maybe it was, because he was wearing tights and it was totally exposed.
Right.
Not like, naked exposed, but you can see what was going on. So Marisol and I had been trying to get a picture of this dude, and we finally did. Okay, so remember that. We took a picture with this dude in a terrible, janky tooth costume. Right. And so I got sick there, and I had to stay in my room one night, and I wasn't feeling good. And that night, because I ate a sandwich, and Marisol, who's from Mexico, was like, yeah, I totally wouldn't have eaten that sandwich. Yeah. And I was like, why didn't you tell me?
Was she being just too polite?
She was. Yeah. She's super polite. And it was at like this she coffee shop, too. And she's like, that sandwich had probably been there for days. And I'm like, you're not helping. Anyway, sandwiches aside, so I was in my room, and I decided to take a bath, and this hotel room was set up so that the door to the bathroom, you could pull it out, and if you pulled out the door, it was like an accordion door. If you pulled out the door, you had a sight line from the bathtub to the TV.
Okay.
So It was pretty cool. And I was not feeling good. I got into the bathtub. I just sat down in the bathtub. And all of a sudden, all the electronics in the room came on, like alarm clock, TV came on at top volume, all the lights came on, the phone rang, and I was so pissed because I felt so miserable. I stood up and I said, enough! And I walked around and I turned everything off. And I was like, really, I was done. So I get back to the office after this. Oh, nothing else happened. And I get back to the office after this, and Marcel sends the pictures. And she's the tooth picture, the janky tooth costume. She sends it to me, and right between us, the guy's head is covered by a huge white glob.
Ooh. Is the theory that you were cursed by Janky Tooth Guy and later haunted in your hotel room?
No, I think I picked something up at Day of the Dead. I picked up an illness, that's for sure.
Oh, I see.
I think someone just liked me and wanted to get my attention. Maybe it was Janky Tooth Guy's
Maybe.
relative who was like, he's doing the best he can.
Right.
Quit being so bougie about your tooth costumes.
I like the idea, too, of you yelling enough and scaring a ghost away.
Yeah.
Like, maybe we're the ones that, that scared them.
But that's what they say you're supposed to do if you ever feel like you're being watched or if something is moving around, and you just say, you can either be nice. I watch a lot of ghost stories. I watch a lot of ghost adventures. Like when I go to my parents' house, I sit on their couch and I'm like, ghost adventures for 6 hours. Because I like to mock them. Anyway, so you're supposed to say, which they never do on ghost adventures, you can stay here, you just need to knock it off. Or like yell, like, you need to leave right now. Yeah. Or if a ghost, like a vampire, ever asks to come in because my friend says, who used to live on an Indian burial ground.
Oh my God.
Said she saw something at her window and he was like, can I come in? And she said no. And she never saw it again.
Fair.
Right?
So it seems like with the paranormal, much as in real life, you want to just set clear boundaries of what makes you uncomfortable.
It's true.
Is that pretty much it?
And if I'm like scared at night and I think there's possibly anything paranormal that could like, I've just watched a bunch of ghost adventures.
Yeah.
And I go to bed and I'm like, oh crap. What if the ghosts come through my TV? Like, I don't really believe that. That's an example. But anyway, you're supposed to be like, please don't show yourself. It's okay that you're here.
Sure. I mean,
but I don't know how you do that, like in Mexico.
Right.
Clearly they understood English. It was an English-speaking ghost. Or my
bilingual ghost.
Basta! Yeah. I don't know. Or my gestures were strong enough.
Maybe just your fierceness. Yeah. I don't know. If I get scared, that's when I start turning to all my ancestors. I'm just like, abuelito. Don't let them hurt me.
With me being raised Catholic, that's when the Hail Marys kick in.
Oh,
like, I will Hail Mary, like, I'll go through 200 of them. It's just comforting. Maybe it's the repetition.
Yeah.
Or like, Mary never asked for any of this.
Yeah.
She's kind of my, like, I don't know. I don't want to say my lady, but...
No, I mean, she's a bit of a tragic figure. It's like she was just, hanging out there probably as a 13-year-old,
yeah.
Right? Just trying to get married off. Finally finds herself a good man, and then, like, she become preggers by the Holy Ghost. Try explaining that to your boyfriend.
I know, and she did, and he was like, okay.
Yeah, man.
Oh, and everybody wants to kill this baby, by the way.
Yeah. And you also have to travel across the desert for, like, days and days. So, yeah. Mary, she knows what's up.
Yep. If anybody can protect you spiritually, it is the Virgin Mary.
It is.
And once a Catholic, always a Catholic. I don't go to Mass anymore, but I am still like, the Virgin Mary is my girl.
Well, I always think, I was also raised Catholic, and I think it's hard to let go of all those things because Catholicism really preys on people's superstition.
Yes.
We have this magic power of prayer. We have the saints, which might as well be demigods, just like, oh, this saint protects you, like protects your eyes, and this one does this, So really fulfills a lot of like pagan instincts that we have.
And at the same time, we're told as Catholics not to believe in the supernatural.
I know, which is crazy. Because
Yeah.
let's face it, they're like filled with supernaturals and rituals and.
But this guy turned wine into blood and you're supposed to drink it. Like, come on. And I can't believe that I dreamt of my grandma who
Yeah.
passed away. Like, that's whatever.
Like, we could have a whole separate podcast just being like Kathy and Inez rant about Catholicism's contradictions
And the supernatural.
and the supernatural. Sometimes the biggest fear is man. Which kind of goes to our friend Cynthia Shore Pet's story.
Cynthia. So Cynthia is a lovely individual, and she was actually in Barcelona with that's it.
Barcelona.
That was so Trumpy right then.
Yeah, I know. That was Kathy's
Puerto Rico. Anyway, I can say it because, you know, I'm not talking to reporters and people in peril.
Right.
Or mocking them. So Cynthia and her husband were in Barcelona in her uncle's apartment. They were sleeping in a small bedroom, and their air mattress took up most of the room. And they opened the window, because I think it was August. I believe she said it was August, and it was hot. So she says, we left the windows open to try to get a little relief, and I quote, a parkour ninja
Halloween costume.
had come up through the balcony, in the window, and over the couch into their room where the air mattress took up most of the space. So he or she took her purse and her phone that were right next to her. And she discovered this because she woke up really groggy and she wondered why her alarm hadn't gone off. She couldn't find her phone, and she searched in the couch, and she saw with a, again I quote, literal tingle that her whole purse was gone. And then her husband asked her, weren't you listening to a podcast last night? And she looked to see if her headphones had been left behind, and they weren't. So her husband, Nathan, said, did he lean right over you and carefully pluck the earbuds right out of your ears? Another tingle.
Yeah. I actually just got a tingle because there's something so creepy about someone being that close.
If you're in an air mattress, you can feel if a mosquito lands on an air mattress. So and I told Cynthia that she called them a cat burglar. And I told her that my first memory of cat burglars is the Great Muppet Caper. So I picture like a giant Muppet or like one of Miss Piggy's friends dressed all in black stealing Cynthia's purse.
Oh, man.
Which makes it a little less scary.
Yeah.
A little more fun.
A little more fun. Well, I remember when I was in Granada in Spain, there is a big either Roma community there or women that are pretending to be Roma that, come up to you and they try to either sell you things or say that they can read your palm and all that kind of stuff. And I had really zero interest in having any of that. I had already kind of heard a little bit, to be careful of them. And one of them came up to me and was trying to, get me to, hand out my palm so she could read it. And I kept saying, no, 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 no. And I wasn't scared up until the point where she literally just grabbed my arm and started, reading it. And I had to pull away. I can't even remember what she said, but just the fact that someone would so, forcefully, just... grab me after saying no, which again goes back to all the horrible things we've been seeing lately. But this was the mildest form, was enough for me to be super creeped out. And I very forcefully said no to her. And then she mumbled something under her breath. And for a whole 24 hours, I was convinced I was cursed because humans, the scariest animal.
My only Roma experience was at a McDonald's in Bucharest because my friends we'd been drinking all day except for our driver, of course. Yeah. And I ran into McDonald's to get food for everybody. And there were people, and I can only describe them as Halloween gypsies. Like, they looked like like when you were 8 and you dressed up as a gypsy. And I was drunk, so I was kind of like, what? And I was arguing with the cashier because I didn't realize you had to pay for ketchup. Which you do when you're in McDonald's in Romania. You have to pay extra for ketchup. And she finally just got frustrated and threw it at me.
Oh.
But I didn't have to pay. And then the Roma lady talked to me in Romanian, and I was like, and then she began in French.
Oh.
And then she was like, hey, what's up? How you doing? In English. And I was like, who are you?
Yeah. International woman of mystery.
Right?
Yeah. Sometimes creepy things are very, very tiny, but can also leave us the tingles.
Yes.
Cynthia says. So this story is from Erica Del Cid. And Erica used to be a trip leader for an organization that ran service learning trips in Ecuador. And it was a very demanding job. She usually had to work for several days in a row without rest. She was busy just kind of problem solving anything that came up with these team leaders. And for several days, all she really wanted to do was just to get a manicure. And of course, it was proving impossible. But one day, she finally had a 2-hour break in the Mercado in Quito. And this is what happened. I will quote, I decided to pack a little bottle of black nail polish in my bag. Later, I took the group of students to a restaurant for breakfast. And as we waited outside for all the students to finish up, I opened my backpack to look for something. I saw the black nail polish bottle at the bottom of the bag, and I thought to myself, I can't wait to paint my nails. A second later, an unknown lady walks up to my group and tells me, I paint nails. I can paint yours. In shock, I shook my head no, and she walked away. The lady read my mind.
What?
Have you ever felt like someone read your mind?
No.
I have. This isn't a travel story, but it's pertinent. And it's probably too much information, people, but here it goes. I've only ever had one-night stand in my whole life. Just one. And the day after, I woke up, obviously feeling very hungover, very tired, and decided that I needed to just soak in the pool and think about my life choices. And as I was walking there, a homeless woman turned to me and literally said, oh, you think you're such a grown woman now, aren't you? Like, don't you? Don't you feel like a grown woman now? Which just freaking, totally, completely freaked me out because I could tell. Because I felt she could smell the sin on me. And that was the only time that I felt like someone had really read my mind.
What if she says that to every woman and it unnerves them all equally? It would unnerve me.
Well, yes, because we probably all have something that we can immediately relate it to, right? Whether it's that, just bad life choices or whatever it is, or a bad day at work, or you yelled at someone. Maybe she just knows us all.
She does.
Yeah.
Maybe she's the Virgin Mary.
It all goes back.
It does.
It all goes back. And we do have one more very short story from another guest of our show, who is Christina Tanner. Christina was a guest on our Women's Health episode. She gave us a ton of really good tips about taking care of yourself and your privates whenever you travel. And she's also traveled extensively quite a lot, and she has this very cutesy, interesting tale.
Well, I don't know if I would call it cutesy. It does involve dogs, though.
That's why.
Spirit dogs aren't cutesy. Spirit dogs are tough. So Christina tells us that she was saved by dogs in the Himalayas once. And she was told afterwards by locals that the leader of the pack was her spirit guide. Ooh. That's what she put in the story.
Yeah.
That just wasn't for effect. So she said it's a long story, but they jumped over a fence to walk down a road with her when she left her bungalow to hike, and she went through town. And she went up the mountains, and then the sun began to set, and she realized that she was in serious trouble because she had no light source, and she's wandering around in the dark in the Himalayas. And so the dogs have been with her this whole time, and one ran to a ridge and stood there until she saw the dog, ran back to her, and stared at her until Christina walked to the ridge with the dog. And it happened over and over again. She's glad she didn't run away when she first saw them because they were quite boisterous and barking and running straight for me, and all she could think about was, everybody told me to get a rabies vaccine. And she didn't because she was a cheapskate. So get your vaccinations.
Right.
But they didn't bite her and instantly bonded to her so much that the villagers thought they were her dogs.
How is that not cutesy?
It's
A
cute.
pack of dogs
It's
saving her.
A pack of wild dogs.
True.
I wouldn't call them cutesy.
Pack of wild dogs. Well, if I were to have any spooky travel story, I would want it to involve animals that rescue me.
Yes, it's true. Or ghost animals.
Or ghost animals. Yeah. So our final story is from our listener, Katie Dow, who has a creepy tale from Cambodia.
My mom knows everything about me. Literally everything. And I would like to say that it's because my mom smothers me or pries into my life or constantly calls me, forcing me to tell her everything. But that's not true. I call her every day and tell her everything, whether she wants to hear it or not. Usually I start to tell her something and she's like, Kate, do I really want to hear this? And I'm like, let's find out. All the sex I had with a Tinder date, my strange bowel movement, that annoying thing my coworker said, she knows it all. And one thing I have made perfectly clear to her is this. If I die under even remotely strange circumstances, she must get my story on Dateline. I will never speak to her again if my death is not portrayed on this NBC Wonder show. And I mean it. I will not haunt her once. I will not send a butterfly to rest on her shoulder in the middle of winter so she knows I'm still with her. Nothing. She knows it. We've talked about it. It's pretty much my only living will. And I thought I finally had the chance a few years ago. I had been backpacking around Asia for a couple of years and had been to Cambodia twice. I had very proudly become one of those insufferable backpackers who was like, I've seen in Cambodia, I want to go somewhere remote. So rightfully so, the universe was like, let's take this bitch down a peg. My friend and I Googled remote, non-touristy Cambodian island, and we found Koh Samui. It's an island roughly the size of Manhattan with literally nothing on it aside from 6 huts built by a German couple. There wasn't even transportation to this island. Our trip there involved taking a minibus and writing down the name of a village and asking to be dropped off there, then hopping on the back of some locals' motorbikes to the town with the pier, then taking the island's private boat, aka a canoe with a motor taped to it, and riding through the open ocean on that for about an hour. But we got there, and it was everything we were hoping for. It was as remote as a coherent thought in Donald Trump's brain. A joke given to me by my mother, by the way. It had the kind of quiet that, as 21st century beings, we are unaccustomed to. The kind of silence that takes some getting used to. The beach was pristine and the water crystal clear. They had hammocks and kayaks and beach toys. There was no electricity but a generator that ran at night. Just to fully explain how awesome this place was, even though I thought this island was the making of my Dateline episode, I still actively recommend it to everyone. It was paradise. We spent our day on the beach letting our tans and smugness grow. We were the real travelers. We tossed a frisbee on the beach and laughed at all those people on those islands filled with buckets of booze and body paints. Fools. Kavita, the owner, reminded us again and again that we were in the jungle. She would say the trees were thick right up to the water until they chopped them all down to build their eco-lodge. In order to keep the nature feel of the place, they were all built with the trees they cut down, and the walls didn't meet the ceiling so that you could have bugs crawling on you while you showered. The first night, instead of turning off our hut lights, we waited for the generator to shut down and plunge us into total deserted island jungle darkness. This is where Keith Morrison's voice would have overplayed water lapping up on a dark beach. They tucked in for their first night in the jungle. the bliss of ignorance, not knowing what was lurking in those open waters. I woke up a couple of hours later in that sleepy, half-awake fog. I sat on the toilet and noticed my friend sitting straight up in bed. I heard noises coming from outside. "What is that?" I shouted to my wide-awake friend. Shut up, shut the fuck up," she whispered through tightly gritted teeth. Me, still not fully awake. "Is it morning? Why are the lights on?" I screamed. I finished peeing and said, "I'm just going to go see what it is," grabbing for the door. "No, shut the fuck up," my friend continued. I stared at her, so confused, and instead just peeked out the large crack on the door jamb. Cut to Keith Morrison interviewing my parents. They would tell him some adorable anecdote about me, and he would give that handsome side grin and say something like, "She sounds like quite the girl." Indeed I was, Keith. I saw several men pacing up and down the beach, illuminated by the moonlight bouncing off the water. They were screaming at each other, but since it was in Khmer, we had no idea what they were saying. I climbed under the mosquito net and sat next to my heavy-breathing friend. I was finally fully awake and realized what was going on. Well, I didn't know exactly what was going on, but I knew it wasn't good. "Are they sawing something?" I asked. My friend gave a terrified shrug. The men were pacing the beach, screaming. "Rah, rah, 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 rah." We could hear women screaming, "Ah! Ah!" We heard a boat's motor idling. Eventually, they walked up to our cabin. They walked on our balcony and shined a flashlight under the door, and walked around and shined a flashlight in all of our windows. They walked around our entire cabin over and over, shining a flashlight in every window and every door. They went back by the bathroom where the ceiling didn't meet the wall and shined a light in there. They walked away and we would slowly, quietly exhale. But then they would walk back, our breath trapped again. I was shaking so badly that even my shoulders were shaking. I felt myself getting ready to vomit. I was thinking about my mom, my poor, worry-wart mother, who didn't want me backpacking around the world but supported me anyway. Now I would die in a practically deserted Cambodian island, and she would never have my body. I had no way to even send her a goodbye message. Cut to my parents dabbing their eyes while Keith asks them, "A young girl traveling the world all by herself, didn't you worry?" My parents would look at each other and grin and talk about how my mom did and my dad didn't, but nothing was going to stop me. Keith side grin. My mouth was stone dry from fear, and I went through a plan in my head. If they came in the front door, I would run out of the back and try to jump off the shower and run into the jungle. But if my friend ran into the jungle, I would run into the ocean. She's much faster than me, and I kept thinking about that quote, "You don't have to run faster than the bear to get away, you just have to run faster than the guy next to you." No way could I do that. We both just kept saying, "I'm so scared, I'm so scared." We were unable to even attempt to calm each other down. We just lay there, breath still caught in our chest, while these men shined a flashlight through the window directly over our heads. "Are we going to die?" I asked my friend. She looked at me and said nothing. We laid there gripping sweaty, shaky hands, occasionally wiping away a tear. And eventually, it just stopped. It got deserted, island, silent again. The only sound, the bugs from the jungle. Our grip still firm, we sat in heavy silence, just waiting. "Is it really over?" I squeaked when enough silence had passed. "I don't know," my friend said. Every passing minute bringing me closer to believing that we had received our stay of execution. I slowly let myself breathe again, my breath escaping slowly through my nose like a small puncture to a tire. We laid there for a while, just continuing to hold hands, staring up at the ceiling until eventually one of us just let go. Then, enough time passed and adrenaline drained from our bodies, we fell asleep. We woke up with the sun, got dressed for breakfast, and found Kavita sitting by a computer. "Guten Tag," she said cheerfully. I shot daggers at her. What happened last night? I demanded. Oh, did you hear all that? Those were police officers. They had gotten prostitutes from the mainland and were looking for a place to sleep with them. We told them we were full, but apparently they didn't believe us. We decided that we needed an early morning swim to clear our heads, so my friend and I bobbed in the ocean while the sun finished rising. Out of the woods walked those police officers and their ladies. In the light of day, I could see that they each had an automatic rifle strapped across their chests and pistols strapped to their ankles. We carried on for the next couple of days in our jungle paradise. No, this wasn't my Dateline episode. But maybe that was a good thing? Keith is supposed to tell me how brave I was and how proud of me my parents must have been. But I laid in that bed, waiting to be murdered, and I was literally about to shit my pants. And looking into my friend's eyes, my best friend of nearly a decade, and just willing God to take her and save me. Wondering if the Cambodians would accept her as a sacrifice. Maybe I should rewrite my will. At least until I can learn to become the hero of my own Dateline story.
And in case you didn't know, do you know that Angkor Wat is supposed to be haunted too?
No, but I can imagine, because just big complex. Sure, lots of historical things happened there.
Well, back in the day, when Cambodia had a little problem, and during their revolution, when everybody was moved to the countryside because they were going to be an agrarian society, and all the intellectuals and people with money and people with skills were all killed. If you were affiliated with the bourgeoisie or with royalty, you were also killed right away, which led a lot of people to hide their true roots. But during that time, a bunch of people hid in Angkor Wat because they thought it was a safe place to hide from the Khmer Rouge, which turned out not to be the case. So in addition to having all that spiritual energy from being a temple as old as time, right. There's also supposed to be, like, people hear gunshots, people see people running away from Angkor Wat, and there's supposed to be all this activity based on the psychic imprint of all the horrific things that took place there during the reign of the Khmer Rouge.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
When I think of creepy places, for example, cemeteries, which I like to visit, I don't find them creepy. I find them beautiful and historic and kind of fun if, like, someone tells, a ghost story about it. Same with hotels that claim to be haunted. The places that really do give me the shivers are places like Cambodia gave me the shivers in general, just because of the amount of genocide that had happened there.
So recently.
Yeah, so recently, exactly. I mean, I've never been to any of the former concentration camps. I know you have, like, in Auschwitz, but I can imagine also feeling that sense of doom there. And just, yeah.
I didn't feel a sense of doom in Auschwitz. I don't know why. Just because, I don't know. I should have. It kind of felt like a museum. And this is my spiritual theory, is that if somebody goes through something like that on Earth, during their time on Earth, I like to think that in the afterlife, they are swept away and to never have to, like, I don't know, swept away to, like, heaven or paradise or whatever you believe. And just, like, I would like to think those souls are cleared from the earth because of all the stuff they endured during their lives. Yeah, we're getting a little deep here.
Yeah.
But so, like, that was my made-up theory about Auschwitz. But when I did feel really creepy was in Vietnam. Did you go to the Hanoi Hilton where, like, they kept POWs and John McCain was there? It's a prison in Vietnam, and I stood in one of the cells and just got the shivers and felt really, really cold, like, bad stuff had happened there. Yeah. But, I was also sick when I was going through Vietnam. So if we're looking for a logical explanation, that could also
be the case.
Could also count for something.
Anyway, that has been our Halloween episode.
If you have any other stories, let us know, because we love them.
Yeah, we do. I'd love to hear more spooky stories or not so spooky stories from our listeners. And if you love this episode and want to hear more, please subscribe to us on iTunes and follow us on Podbean. And you can also find us where most podcasts are found. Leave us a review because it really helps to spread the word and get people to find our lovely podcast. And we are also on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram at XXWillTravel. And I think that's pretty much it.
Yes, so happy Halloween.
Go forth
And travel.